Juan Rafael Munoz, Jr. I live in Raleigh. North Carolina.
When did you enlist in the Corps?
I enlisted in the Corps in 1955, August.
How old?
I'm 72 years old now.
How old were you then?
I was 19.
Where were you then? Where were you living then?
Long Island, New York.
I was living in Long Island, New York.
I was living in Long Island, New York.
What did your mother and father say when they found out you enlisted?
They were glad.
My parents were glad?
My parents were glad. My father was from Costa Rica. My mother was from Germany during World War I, and they were very proud.
What MOS did you enlist?
I was an avionics chief, 6691.
What was your favorite song while you were over there?
To tell you the truth, I really don't remember.
What band did you enjoy?
Don't even remember that. Too long ago.
But you had your mind. How long were you on active duty?
21 years, 6 months, and 11 days.
I was in 21 years, 6 months.
I was in 21 years, 11 months, and 6 days.
You were active the whole time?
Yes.
You were active duty. What's your best R&R memories?
My best R&R memories was Australia. Australia was the most congenial place. The people loved Americans. American GIs, I remember I went to a home where the mother had a book where she had kept a log of every American during World War II. She had his name, his rank, his serial number, his home that she had in her home. There was over 400 names in the book. And I was proud to put my name down there.
Did you bring back any photographs of yourself?
Very few. You didn't take photographs of yourself. If somebody else took them, you were lucky.
When did you graduate from boot camp?
I graduated from boot camp in November of 1965. 55, excuse me.
Paris Island?
Paris Island.
Tell me whatever comes to mind about the time.
In Paris Island?
Country. In country, Vietnam.
In country in Vietnam? The first time I went from the brigade in Hawaii. The whole brigade moved out. When we arrived in Chu Lai, I was on an LST. We landed. When we got off, the Vietnamese were there with leis because they already knew we were supposedly coming, which was supposedly secret. I spent 6 months there. I requested to stay, and I was turned down. They said, go back to Hawaii. They sent me back to the States. I went back to the United States, and they sat there and they said, okay, you're going back to a fixed wing outfit. I was A4 trained, which was a jet plane. And they checked my hearing and they said, uh-oh, your high frequencies are gone because of the jets. We're going to send you over to helicopter. So they stuck me in a tube with 2 jet engines behind me. I proceeded with HMM-164 over to Vietnam in 1966. was the first 46 helicopter outfit in Vietnam. I stayed with them until 1967. I went back to the United States. They sent me to school in Memphis, Tennessee as an avionics. And I taught the CH-46 avionics in New River, North Carolina until 1970, where I was sent back over to Vietnam. When I got back to Vietnam, I was sent to HMM-263. I went there as avionics chief, and it was a very good experience. It was a lot different than the first time I went to Vietnam because they had changed a lot of rules, regulations. The base was much better. The living conditions and everything else were completely changed. The rules of engagement were changed. The rules for our, originally when we went over in 1966, to get an air medal as far as flying, which we had to fight for, were you had to receive fire and take fire before you could get a mission. It took 20 missions to get an air medal. A lot of times we flew, we get shot at, but we were told it was a friendly village, we could not return fire, so we couldn't get an air medal. When I went back in 1970 with 263, I went out one day as a gunner, even though I was the avionics chief. I flew as a gunner. I went out, common resupply, which I thought of. We hit 20, 25 different places. All we did is take ammunition, food, different things, just to resupply different bases. When I came back, a young man from the office came down and says, "Hey, Gunny, you've got an air medal." And it really hit me hard because before we had to receive fire, return fire. We received fire I don't know how many times, and we never returned fire. And we never received an air medal. This time I went out. All we did is just jump from this place to that place to that place to that place, just giving people what they needed, ammunition, anything. We never got fired on, nothing happened. But I received an air medal. To me, something was wrong. Things had changed. The war had changed. After that, I really didn't fly that much. I got maybe 3, 4 more air medals. The biggest night I remember was December the 30th or 31st to January the 1st of 1970 to 71, New Year's Eve. I was already in the Marine Corps a lot of years. I was older than most of the guys, and most of them needed time off to just lay down and relax. So I said, hey, I drank a lot. I didn't need another dray. I just decided, hey, I'll take the medevac that night. The conditions were real bad. We figured we'd never have to go out on the medevac. And about 2 a.m. we get a ring. There was a bell in the medevac area where when it went off, crew chief, the gunner, which I was a gunner at that time, the corpsman would jump up, we'd go out, start the aircraft, get it ready, while the pilots were in getting briefed on what the mission was. When we got out to the aircraft and the pilots got out there, they said, there's an emergency medevac. We had an Army guy who was an emergency. The Army had turned down the medevac. The Navy had turned down the medevac. The Air Force had turned down the medevac. And here we were. The Marine Corps, they asked us, and naturally, we said, damn it, if there's a guy out there on New Year's Eve, we're going to go get this son of a gun and bring him back. The conditions were rotten. We had visibility from 1 foot to 100 foot, 200 to 300, 100 foot to 200 foot was broken. 200 foot to 5,000 feet was socked in. IFR. We usually took 2 gunships to follow us. We only took 1 because of the conditions. We flew south because this guy was up in the mountains. We got down to an area where we could sit, wait. We called basketball, who was the Air Force, who dropped flares down for us that we could go into an area which was dark. We started out, we just about got around a turn where we couldn't see any light behind us, and basketball called us and said, we've run out of flares. So we backed out. Another flare ship came in. We went in, flying down the river into the mountains. The mountains were about 5,000 feet at max. We went back in, probably took us 15, 20 minutes to get where we wanted. This guy was on the radio calling us and saying, okay, I can hear you coming, I can hear you coming. We raised up into, it was like going into a complete fog where you could not see anything. We had our lights on and everything else, and we raised up, and this guy on the phone kept on saying, okay, you're coming closer, I can hear you, I can hear you. He told us, okay, he could see some lights back in the fog. So we backed up to the mountain, not knowing where it was. And all of a sudden, here out of the fog, we didn't know anybody, we didn't see anything, and all of a sudden this guy comes out, jumps out there with his rifle, a radio, jumps on the back end, comes in, nobody else. We're looking for an emergency medevac. We're looking for somebody who is really bad off because they're calling for an emergency, especially in these conditions. Corpsman goes back, checks him out, and he says to the pilot says, what the hell's going on? Where's the emergency? Where's the emergency? And he said, this is the emergency. The guy had shot his left finger, index finger, off. He was the one who was calling up. His squad had left him up there with a radio. Well, we were rather mad about that. And when the pilots heard, because they called back naturally to the corpsman and asked him, what's going on? And the corpsman says, well, we've got our emergency. Well, what's wrong? How fast do we have to get him back? What's going on? The whole 9 yards. And the corpsman says, well, this is our emergency. He shot his finger off. And I don't remember the pilot's name or the co-pilot's name, but I heard a slight thing over the radio what said, he better be an emergency when we get him back to Da Nang. So as we moved out, we're getting back over to where we're going to go down and out. Basketball called us and said, that's the last flare. Everything went pitch black. You couldn't see a hand in front of your face outside of the aircraft. So our chase bird we didn't know where they went. Our pilot decided we're going to just spiral and go up. We broke out at about 7,000 feet. Beautiful sky, beautiful day, beautiful evening, big moon, stars. We were talking to Da Nang. They said, okay, we'll bring you back in. They brought us out over the ocean, brought us north, brought us up past Da Nang, and there was a pass on the north side of Da Nang, north side of the Da Nang Basin, Hai Van Pass. They brought us all the way up through the Hai Van Pass, brought us down straight into Da Nang, and they're all the time saying, okay, you're on the glide slope, you're on the glide path, don't worry about it, you're coming through. And the last thing we heard from them was, okay, you're coming out, you should be able to see the runway. As we came through the clouds, all that we saw was some ship was there, and its lights were all over the place, and we were headed right toward them. The pilots pulled up, we got over the top, went into Da Nang, dropped the guy off, went back over to Marble Mountain, slept maybe an hour. It was all over.
The last reunion, the one in Charlotte?
No, I didn't make the Charlotte reunion. I did know Mike. He wasn't the best Marine in the world, but I liked him. He was not the best crew chief in the world. In fact, he was a lousy crew chief. In fact, that showed by his lack of making rank. But he deserved what he got.
Rose to the occasion.
That's it. In fact, if you talk to Colonel Ledbetter, he's here. He was in a plane with him.
Okay, you got a story for us, so let's hear it.
After I went through boot camp, avionics training, I was sent to Florida, Opelika, Florida, which was the Marine Corps base, Opelika, about 20 miles north of Miami. We were flying AD-5s, which is an old prop job. It could carry troops. It could carry litters up to 5. But we had the unique thing that we also, our pilots, to get their time flying, we'd fly into Cuba. Cuba at that time was wide open. Well, we had a thing going that if we went to Cuba, it was only $1 a gallon for rum from the factory. So what we do, because every time a plane came back into the United States, they would check it. They'd make sure you were not carrying any contraband, especially alcohol. So what we did, we had a 500-gallon centerline belly tank, which would fit on the aircraft. It had never had fuel in it. It had been cleaned, prepped, and that was our rum barrel. We'd fly to Cuba. Once we got to Cuba, we'd load it on a bomb trailer. We'd take it all the way to the rum factory, and it was just like filling up your gas tank. They'd bring us up there, we'd line up, they'd say how many gallons you want, they'd fill it up, we'd say 300 gallons, 200 gallons, 100 gallons, because it was $1 a gallon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.